Hello everyone, we are Group 2C and we're here to tell you a little bit about campus internationalization. According to Knight, internationalization is the process of integrating an international or intercultural dimension into the teaching, research, and service functions of the institution. Historically, the internationalization of higher education had been opportunistic and externally driven. Funding for specific types of activities was provided by the federal government or other organizations. Such opportunistic internationalization efforts resulted in a marginalization of international programs and activities and contributed to the need for a more deliberate and comprehensive approach to internationalization. This has led to a recent emphasis on comprehensive internationalization, which the American Council on Education describes as a strategic coordinated process that seeks to align and integrate international policies, programs, and initiatives, and positions colleges or universities as more globally oriented and internationally connected. Knight and DeWitt have written extensively about the process of internationalization. They've stressed a focus on academic activities and organizational factors as a key to the successful integration of the international dimension into research, teaching, and service functions of higher education institutions. According to Knight and DeWitt, the program strategies that should be used are separated into 4 groups. They are academic programs, research and scholarly activities, extracurricular activities, and external relations and services. The organizational strategies are also separated into 4 groups. Those are governance, operations, support services, and human resource development. There are many different rationales offered for internationalization, but many of the authors identified global competence of graduates as the primary goal of internationalization. What does it mean to be globally competent? It's a difficult question to answer. Few institutions actually define it, but Olson and her colleagues have suggested 3 questions that institutions must address in defining global competence. The first is, what knowledge, attitudes, and skills are needed? Brustein points to a few, such as effective intercultural communication, the ability to work in international settings, an awareness and tolerance of diverse cultures and points of view, and knowledge of international events as indicating global competency. The second question is, which learning experiences facilitate that type of learning? Some examples would be study abroad, courses with international focus, international students already on campuses. And the third question, how do institutions know they are successful in their efforts? This is the most difficult question to answer. Traditionally, institutions have examined if these activities occurred and how often they occurred, but they now recognize a need to focus on clear, measurable global learning outcomes to determine if these activities are actually meeting goals.
One misconception about campus internationalization is that there's only one correct way to do it, and that is simply not true. Campuses can customize their internationalization plans to best fit their needs. In our readings, Nolan and Hunter identified 4 essential enablers that were characteristics of all successful universities that were able to internationalize. Those are leadership, faculty engagement, policy support, and financial support. Our group identified 2 main approaches to campus internationalization that the universities in our readings were taking. Those approaches are a top-down approach and a bottom-up approach. A top-down approach, the pros to this approach are that there is usually better funding opportunities because the initiatives and programs are built directly into the university's main budget. The programs can happen on a larger scale. They usually encompass multiple departments or multiple colleges. And the buy-in from senior administrators, such as the president's office or a board of regents, is invaluable. Cons to this approach is that there's usually little initial communication between senior administrators and the individuals that will be initiating the programs. Those individuals being faculty and staff. An example of a top-down approach is the University of Denver. They created a scholarship program in an effort to aid more of their students in having a study abroad experience. And that scholarship program was built directly into the university's main budget. A bottom-up approach. The pros to this approach is that there is usually more campus-wide buy-in, whether it be from faculty working on a singular project or staff working on a singular project, and the faculty and staff are usually able to work across departments to utilize more resources. Small changes can snowball into much larger changes. Say one department tries a program and is successful at it, another department can either mimic or piggyback off that program, and pretty soon multiple departments are included or having programs of their own, and so it started with a small program and now is a much larger program. Cons to this approach is that there's usually a lack of initial funding because the pool the monies are coming from is much smaller. An example of this approach is the School of Art and Design at the University of Michigan. The College of Art and Design decided that it wanted more of its students to study abroad, and so through research grants and different funding initiatives, the college was able to not only increase their students studying abroad, but also over time was able to build it into a graduation requirement.
We are focusing on 4 specific activities that we identified as crucial in understanding and also assessing internationalization efforts on different campuses. Studying abroad has typically been seen as the most productive way for students to gain internationalization experience. Soria and Troisi actually describe study abroad as an internationalism effort, where students are able to engage in a culture, but oftentimes not come to full understanding of what that culture and that place really means in their academic experience. It's also important for students to debrief once they return from study abroad to better understand their experiences and their increased global mindedness, but that opportunity certainly doesn't always happen. Study abroad can also be limiting. Oftentimes students share academic majors, socioeconomic status, race, and even gender when it comes to studying abroad. So not everyone has the opportunity for these types of internationalization experiences. International students are certainly another activity and opportunity for internationalization on campus. Within the past few years, there is certainly a greater focus on recruiting these international students. The question is certainly, though, is how responsive are U.S. campuses to international students' needs? StormQuest specifically notes some of the limited searches that have gone on in recruitment of international students. Some universities and colleges focus on finding students that have strong English skills, while others search for students that have already become accustomed to the U.S. culture. By focusing on these specific traits, it's difficult to get an entirely diverse student body focused on international students. These students also face the adjustment to U.S. higher education, which can certainly impact their experience. International partnerships are also very impactful for faculty engagement. Liberal arts institutions often benefit from international partnerships as internationalization activities. And these partnerships can also help a school assess their own successes and failures within internationalization efforts. International consortia can also be influential in bringing internationalization efforts to campus, and case studies are often important in discovering these identities. Finally, curriculum initiatives are an important part of internationalization efforts on campuses. A lot of institutions are focusing outcomes on global opportunities, but Olson, Green, and Hill described outcomes that are most beneficial if they produce globally minded students. Olson also specifically referenced the importance of general education requirements, such as the ACE-9 objective within UNL's undergraduate outcomes. The goal for the future is to certainly plan internationalization efforts that plan for globally minded students, not just those that have an understanding of other cultures.
Several of our readings also provided implications for the future. These implications, in some instances, are already making their presence felt on campuses. Some are just starting to make their presence felt. but all of the implications are shaping a context against which institutions in the future will need to make their decisions. The first implication, financial support, is one of the framing concepts identified by Nolan and Hunter. This refers to the budget constraints that more and more of our institutions are finding themselves coming up against. What this leads to is the very real possibility that institutions who delay internationalization end up facing more expensive costs when they decide to internationalize. And that's something to consider when you're determining if your institution is ready to begin the internationalization effort. On a related note, global education enrollment is a clear implication and opportunity for the future. Hudzik reveals that the enrollment has been increasing and is likely to continue increasing across the world in global higher education. What that means, however, is those institutions who choose to wait are not only missing out on the people they could be recruiting now, but they're missing out on the growth of the pool that they could be recruiting from every year they delay their effort. On another economic note, we have the dichotomy of internationalization versus internationalism. In the case study, Stromquist identified internationalism as the underlying values and belief in internationalizing a campus and fostering global citizenship. Internationalization, on the other hand, refers to the global dynamics, the market dynamics that influence and shape a university's behavior. The cautionary tale here that Stromquist found is that internationalization can restrict universities' maneuverability if they aren't paying attention to the dynamics that are affecting them. And that's a clear warning to any institution planning to internationalize to take the time to plan ahead and think about what they want to accomplish and act accordingly. This dovetails into opportunistic versus planned approaches. We've already seen this occurring, but this is still an implication to bear in mind for the future, that planned approaches tend to lead towards much smoother internationalization efforts. That doesn't mean that opportunistic approaches always fail. It doesn't mean that a planned approach will always succeed, but it does give credence to slowing down and making sure that the community is ready to internationalize successfully. On a much broader scale, we simply have international issues. In recent years, in recent decades, we've become to confront world issues that span more than just one country. The concern here is that as we begin to confront global warming, global health, international war, we want to ensure that those experts in the international community who are coming together to solve those, to confront the challenges, receive an international education. And the best opportunity for them to do so is at colleges and universities like the ones that we work at.